Hey, what's up? Back again.
That first bass note hit me in the chest, and I was just like, there's no way that's 2/8.
MB Enclosures has his own YouTube channel, and this guy is an animal when it comes to designing boxes.
Hey, what's up? This is MBE's thoughts on a common myth, but I'm gonna tell you where it might have some. It could have had some validity. I don't know. I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is this. People say that smaller drivers are more accurate in the reproduction of bass. It's a tighter bass and it's more accurate sounding. In actuality, and it's easier for them to what they say is always it's more accurate and it's tighter bass, not sloppy. And I think people are saying that, and that myth has arose because of the type of bass that you get from smaller drivers. Now, let me say this. The smaller the driver, the more inefficient it is at reproducing bass. Why? Because it must move air. Bass is made by the rarefying and compressing of air inside the enclosure and inside the listening environment that you're in. Okay. Now, the bigger the cone, the easier it is for it to rarefy and compress that air, and you perceive that as bass. The bigger the cone. The bigger the cone, the more efficient it is in making bass because of that one thing. It can move more air and don't have to move as far. The smaller the driver, the more it's going to have to move, the farther it's going to have to move, and the less air it's going to move to do that same frequency. And the more power is going to be used to gain a certain amount of output. So a bigger driver, let's say this boy right here. On the same frequency, this 8 doesn't have to move it's going to move the same amount of times per cycle. You understand that? It's going to move the same amount of times per cycle. But the power applied to it to do that movement is going to be less than you would need for a 6.5 driver to do it. And as you go up in size, let's say you go to a 10 or you go to a 12, every time you go up in size and the performance level is the same, you're going to use that much less power to attain a given frequency and to attain a given output. So, the bigger the driver, the more efficient it is. Now, but let's quantify why people say smaller drivers are more accurate and tighter. It could be, as you increase the cone area, the edges of the cone are moved farther away from the piston, which is the voice coil, which is driving it. You got core rock. You also have the edges of the cone. These edges are being subjugated to different pressures based on the outside environment of your cabin and how much power has been applied to it as the piston is moving up and down the pole. These edges of this cone, you can't see them with your eyes, but they are fluctuating. They are warping. That's why it's a lot of emphasis placed on the type of material used to make the cone. It needs to be rigid to endure the pressures exerted upon the edges. The further you get away from the center, then the manufacturer must take into account how much it weighs, what type of material is being used, so it can negate those nonlinearities or cone flexations, which will distort the color of your bass under extreme power. So it could be that it is easier for a smaller driver to retain its shape throughout its stroke than a larger driver. And when you overextend, overpower something on a larger driver, your bass it's easier for you to hear the discolorations, the distortion in your base, because maybe that cone is moving not linear with the stroke of the piston. And the smaller the driver, the less flexation you're going to get here, because the material is now closer to the piston itself. Closer to the piston means the divorce core. That's a piston. It's moving back and forth. So since it's closer to the piston, you're getting less warps. The base is staying, the wave is staying more concentric. And so your ear thinks that it's tighter and more controlled. That could be it. Tighter, more accurate base. That could be true in comparison to a larger driver. And then it all depends on the quality of the build itself of the driver. Does the manufacturer actually care what he's trying to give you? Or is he doing like DD or B2 Audio or Digital Designs or DC Audio? Are they taking that into account when they design the drivers? All my brands, when they design the drivers and design the cone, they are making sure that the cone is able to retain its shape, its linearity throughout its entire stroke. Kicker has a lot of emphasis on their cone. That Q class had 12 pieces. 12 pieces to make that one cone. Digital Designs, the mixture of the paper is not what everybody else uses. It's custom. Only hand-built subwoofers. BT Audio has its own pulp mixture. DC Audio, same thing. The DB Drive, same thing. Once they go proprietary basket, they also focus on their cone. Some just use carbon fiber to attain it. Others use carbon fiber for rigidity, and they use their own pulp mixture instead of just using a cone, a paper cone, standard paper cone. All that's important in the tonal quality of your base. How rigid, stiff does this stay throughout this stroke? Because if that wave, like the sine wave, squares off, if that cone warps any kind of way, you're going to hear that note on that bass is not going to be the same. So it could be that smaller drivers, because they're inherently inefficient. This is true, but they're also inherently able to keep the rigidity of their cone throughout the stroke, because their cone is not that far away from the piston that's moving. So it's less linearities, less warping. Possibly. That's just MBE's thoughts. Could not be true. Could be true, could not be true. But that's just my thoughts on the subject, so I'm putting that out there. Let it be. Y'all talk about it and discuss it in the comments, or discuss them on yourselves, discuss it on Facebook or whatever, and see what it could be. It could be. I love small drivers because that's what I can run my application. And I have the ability to make them play very, very low. Very, very low. Peace! Get it if you need an enclosure, man. 404-694-4818. And as always, please listen responsibly.